Happy Friday. What's up? Welcome in. I'm Farzin Vasugian. Hope you're all having a great Red Friday, off-season edition of the Red Friday live chat. Here we are. Yeah, Combine weekend, I guess, technically, but the whole Combine ordeal kind of starts on Tuesday because that's when a lot of the coaches and scouts, GMs arrive. They start doing a lot of media there. So it is kind of a whole week-long deal. It's like the Super Bowl. It's not just Super Bowl Sunday. The whole week is an entire spectacle. So that's kind of what I'm not saying the Combine is like the Super Bowl, not at all, but the whole week is a pretty big deal there. A lot of interviews happening with the players who are there participating, the coaches, scouts, GMs, anyone and everyone who is there. So let's chat it up here. This is a Q&A. This is for you guys to ask whatever questions you want, whatever is on your mind. I usually start things off here just kind of talking about some of the big topics, and there have been a lot of big topics involving the Kansas City Chiefs this week. So I'm going to kind of get started with some of the biggest topics for this week, and then I want you guys to ask your questions. I will go through all the questions on tonight's live chat, so please comment below for those watching live on Facebook and on YouTube, and I will get to your guys' questions later on. All right. Just had to pull that up there. Let's start with Trey Smith here because that's the big story of the week for Kansas City. Him and Travis Kelce, really, but I'll start with Trey Smith because I do think that it's the bigger story. We kind of knew about Travis Kelce with the 10 million confirmations we got. I guess the final word the final confirmation will come next week on his podcast when he will expand on his decision to come back. But the Trey Smith one is a big deal. It is a $23 million franchise tag on a one-year deal. Now, it hasn't been signed, of course. We'll see what the Chiefs are going to do. Do they keep him on the one-year tag? Do they trade him? Do they come to some sort of an agreement on a long-term deal? That is going to be that's going to be important to see. And this is a big deal because the complaints we've had for a long time is that Kansas City just doesn't have the left tackle spot down. They need to figure that out. They need to go out there and bring in the right offensive tackle. Now, if you lose a top-tier right guard, but you don't have, you do have a good left tackle, but not a good right guard, what does it matter anyway? Kansas City's had a stout interior offensive line, and they've been weak at the offensive tackle position for several years now. So I think by that alone, if you trade Trey Smith and get draft picks and you are able to find a premier left tackle, great. But what good does that do you? Unless they're very confident someone on the roster right now could be a perfect replacement for Trey Smith. I will say I'm a big fan of Hunter Norzad. I thought he actually was one of the very few bright spots in that Chiefs-Broncos game in Week 18. When he was a center, his snaps were very low, but his pass blocking was great, in my opinion. And I think that guy could easily play right guard if ever needed. Hopefully, that's not something they have to explore right now, but he is certainly on the day. I think a lot of the Chiefs with their offensive line, who's their right guard going to be? Is going to be Trey Smith. Do they move Kingsley Suamataia from left tackle to right guard? I've seen that speculation online. I don't think they will. Is Hunter Norzad going to be the guy that they put in Trey Smith's spot moving forward? And then what do they do with left tackle? Do they give Kingsley Suamataia another chance? Do they give Wanya Morris another chance? Do they give DJ Humphries another chance? I suppose we can't completely dismiss the possibility of Joe Thuney being your left tackle. Although again, all those options I just provided, I don't think are likely. I think the most likely option would be DJ Humphries would be the left tackle. But if you were to keep it, with someone who was on the team this past season, obviously Humphries is a free agent. They will have to figure that out once they start re-signing players. Haven't done that yet. But I think if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, this is your opportunity to figure out what you're going to do with your offensive line. And Trey Smith, here's the other thing. I know Trey Smith is tagged right now. What are teams willing to give up for Trey Smith? I trust that there are a lot of teams that are willing to give Trey Smith a big contract. But are they willing to give up multiple draft picks for Trey Smith? So I don't think you're going to see a lot of teams. I mean, unless you're getting the number 1 overall pick, which I doubt, I don't think you're going to see a lot of teams want to give up a lot of draft capital and then give him anywhere from 23 to potentially $28 million a year on average. I mean, you're investing a lot in a right guard there. I'm not saying Trey Smith is not worth it. I just don't know if there are a lot of teams willing to give up multiple draft picks and give that same player that they gave up a lot of draft capital for a massive contract. Because Trey Smith is certainly due to hit the jackpot and reset the right guard market. So that to me, and by the way, for those of you who are watching live on Facebook and YouTube, comment below. Let me know what questions you guys have. I'll go through them today. This is not going to be a very long Red Friday live chat. I know we've done 3 episodes of the Chiefs Zone podcast. If you haven't caught any of those, please do so. We covered a lot of things this week on the Chiefs Zone. It was just nonstop, day after day. A lot of topics we covered as the week went on. So comment below with your comments, questions, whatever you have, and we'll get into those after I'm done with my my opening statements here. As far as Trey Smith, to kind of end things here, I'm optimistic they'll get this done for 2 reasons. Number one, Brett Veach knows he cannot afford to let Trey Smith walk. You just can't. Unless you are 1,000% certain that a guy like Hunter Norzad can do a great job. I don't think we're there yet. The second reason, and this one, maybe I'm looking into this too much, but Patrick Mahomes retweeted the NFL's tweet that Trey Smith was tagged. You usually don't see players do that kind of thing, especially Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has kind of, like the Chris Jones contract last year, like 2 minutes before it came out, Patrick Mahomes kind of indicated that that a deal was done. And he doesn't do that kind of thing unless he knows. They keep him in the know for sure. So I don't think he would have retweeted that if it was bad for Kansas City. I know the franchise tag always comes with a negative connotation. I don't think that's the case here. I do think that the Chiefs and Trey Smith will come to some sort of an agreement on a long-term deal. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. It's going to be interesting, though, what the contract's going to look like. I think it'll be kind of what the franchise tag is at right now, probably $23-24 million a year. But if this turns into a bidding war, then we'll see. Just kind of depends on how badly a team would really want a guy like Trey Smith. I do want to get into Travis Kelce here. He is set to come back. How many confirmations do we need that Travis Kelce's coming back? I kind of joked around that with that topic earlier this week on the podcast. We heard Diana Rossini's comment about Travis Kelce leaning towards coming back. And then Brett Veach kind of hinted that, yeah, he's coming back. Pat McAfee did his thing, and then the New Heights podcast, and then the Chiefs on their social media accounts confirmed he's coming back for year 13. It's like, I mean, listen, if the Chiefs are saying it, I think it's done, but I think a lot of people still want to hear that from Kelce, and maybe more so kind of expand into his reasoning, although I don't think it's going to be much of a surprise. He'll probably just say that he doesn't want to go out like that. Listen, it's hard to go out on top. Not a lot of people get to go out on top. Peyton Manning went out with a Super Bowl win, but that entire season, including the Super Bowl for Peyton Manning, was not very good. So, there are very few people who are able to say they were able to go out on top. Tom Brady certainly had a rough ending to his career, both with the Patriots and the Bucks. But poor Tom Brady, 7-time champion. Like, give me a break. I just wonder with Travis Kelce, because there were a couple of moments this year where I truly did question his effort on some plays. Obviously, the one in the Super Bowl going viral in the second half, I think it was, where he just was standing around while Mahomes was trying to run around for his life and eventually chose to scramble. And then there was the Black Friday game against the Raiders where Mahomes, and I know a lot of people will say that the Chiefs should have ran the football. Okay. But he had a wide open Xavier Worthy. And if Travis Kelce puts an effort and throws a block, Mahomes hits Worthy for an easy touchdown there, or maybe just he slides for a first down. We know the Chiefs don't really care for stats too much. We've seen a lot of their players, Jerick McKinnon, Patrick Mahomes, Kareem Hunt, sliding when needing to. But I just think Travis Kelce, listen, I'll defend Travis Kelce in a second here. The effort certainly was a question. And he texted Pat McAfee and said he's going to try to get into the best shape of his life. The idea that he's washed up is absolutely not true. It's really not. First of all, he was one of the better players in the NFL, according to ESPN's analytics, when it came to getting open. And this is wide receivers, tight ends, all pass catchers included on this list. He was one of the better players at that. And I know Andy Reid was saying in press conferences that he was getting double teamed. It's not true. It's not necessarily true. Kelce had a lot of one-on-one plays and would always find ways to get open the same way he has been all year long. The problem is Patrick Mahomes hasn't had an opportunity to hit open receivers because of the amount of pressure he faces. And we've kind of established that just a moment ago and really all week long. But Kelce, you gotta put an effort into throwing a block, an easy one that he could have made against that Raiders defender. And I don't know what his job was on that play in the Super Bowl, the one that's gone viral of him just kind of standing around watching Mahomes. Maybe he was supposed to stand there the whole time. Maybe that was supposed to be his assignment. I don't know. It's always hard to say without knowing the exact play, what it was, what it entails. But I think Kelce ultimately, the idea that he's washed is not true. I mean, listen, yeah, he's getting older, and he's acknowledged on Stephen A's podcast that he's not putting up massive numbers like he once did. But he was still top 5 in the NFL in receptions and yards among tight ends. So, listen, Kelce, who just had the fewest receiving yards he's ever had in a single season, if that's his worst, yet still top 5, what does that say about the other tight ends out there? I mean, come on. And I will say this. I know last year and this year offenses kind of got off to kind of a wacky start, slow start. And I guess maybe the tight end position has kind of regressed a little bit these last 2 seasons. I think it's a coincidence that it's happening along with Kelce, getting to the point where he's obviously older now, but Kelce's still a top 5 tight end. Last time I checked. Maybe not as dominant as he once was. Of course not. But find me 5 tight ends that had more receptions and yards than Kelce. You can't. You just can't. Yeah, it's a pretty big price tag there, and I've gone over this before. But I mean, let's be honest here. I'm not going to argue over the fact that I'm not going to say the Chiefs absolutely need to restructure his deal. Travis Kelce has played for less for a long, long time. Now, I'm not going to sit here and play victim to Travis Kelce here, because the guy's going to make a lot of money in the Hollywood industry. His podcast is obviously very successful with everything, all the sponsors you hear. Listen, I don't know about you guys. I mean, listen, we always have sponsors on the Chiefs Zone podcast. I don't ever play them in the beginning here. And by the way, I want your honest replies here. Whenever a podcast starts with 3 different 30-second ads, I hit the 30-second fast forward button 3 times. Now, the way I do it is a little different. And for anyone out there podcasting that, maybe this is something you guys might want to learn. Whenever I do my reads, my live ads here, I just kind of said it. I do them live. A majority of my listeners are through my live streams on Facebook and YouTube. Some still download and listen to the podcast on Apple and Spotify, don't get me wrong, but a majority of the viewers come through the live streams on Facebook and YouTube. So whenever somebody is starting their podcast off with any kind of ad. Usually it's a 30-second ad. The Kelce brothers start with like 3 ads. I'm sorry, man. I mean, I'm skipping all of them. I don't want to hear any of that. I just don't. I think you've got to find a better way to include ads on a podcast. You got to do it in the middle of it, because the hope is, if you're a podcaster, don't start with it, because, and I'll give you an example. A lot of times when I'm listening to a podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever, I'll set my phone down and I might be, cleaning, vacuuming, doing whatever I need to do while I have my headphones on. If my phone just happens to be at a place that I can get to right now, well, I'm going to have to sit through this ad regardless how long it is. That's kind of the hope, but you don't start off at the beginning. You kind of do it in the middle. But anyway, my point is Travis Kelce getting a shit ton of ads for his podcast. So money's not an issue for him. But as far as his football contract go, I'm not going to argue it, because he has played for less for a long time. He's never made more than $12.2 million up until this past season. So I have no issues with him making more money this year than maybe some might feel is ideal when you look at the Chiefs' salary situation. Now, if you're Kelce, you kind of want to go out on it. If we're being realistic, this could be his last season. He's going to turn 36 in October. So if you're Kelce, you want to go out on a high note, then yeah, maybe you should take a pay cut if the goal is to go out on a high note, just so the team can bring in the right guys and be able to afford all the players they want to afford. He does have an $11.5 million roster bonus coming his way, I think on March the 15th. That is coming up very soon. He's about to get paid in March. That must be really nice. Last thing I'll talk about here, and then I'm going to turn it over to you guys for questions. For those of you tuning in live just now, it's never too late. Comment below with your questions, and I will get to all the questions, comments here. So please drop your questions below, and I'll get to them very shortly. There's not going to be a very long Red Friday live chat here, because we've done so many live streams this week, but we'll still answer whatever questions you guys have. The whole situation with the Chiefs and the Royals. Listen, I think if you're the Chiefs, you have 3 options. One is renovate Arrowhead. The other one is the Legends. The third option is, with the Royals expected to leave the Truman Sports Complex, maybe that spot right there where the Royals, if we're talking in the future, used to play, that could be the new Arrowhead. Because I do think it is time for an indoor stadium here. Listen, I know a lot of people are going to talk about memories and how historic the current Arrowhead is and all of that, and I get all of that. We can talk about, memories and great moments and how historic it is for a long time. But we do have to get with the times. It is the 3rd oldest stadium in the NFL. It was built in 1972. I mean, this is quite an old stadium here. And it's certainly aged very well. It turns 54 this year. But you do need to consider change. Drastic change. And I know I had Pete Munda on the podcast earlier this week, and he made a good point. If the Chiefs were to build a new stadium, whether in Kansas or Missouri, and as long as it's indoors, yeah, the Chiefs will get 1 Super Bowl, but they're hardly ever going to be in the rotation. The Chiefs are not going to be getting Super Bowls every 5 to 7 years, especially with a lot of stadiums now being indoors and much newer. Atlanta, Minnesota, Vegas. I mean, so many, and obviously the warm weather cities that they go to. Jerry's World, the stadiums in Florida, California. I mean, there are a lot of stadiums in those states as well. You just can't keep going to those same cities every 5 days. The league likes to spread it around. I'm sure there are certain places they'll go to more frequently. They're going back to SoFi very soon. I'm sure Vegas is going to be actively in the rotation. That was a very successful Super Bowl in terms of revenue for the NFL. They're definitely going to want to keep that going. But I don't think Super Bowls are the only thing, though. You want to bring in Final Fours. You want to bring in college bowl games, and that's the one you could probably get more frequently in Kansas City. Major WWE events, whether it's a WrestleMania or a Royal Rumble. I mean, listen, I think it'd be great if a WrestleMania came. I don't know if WWE would come to a market size like Kansas City. I mean, listen, if we're just being honest, Kansas City's not a major market. but they might bring in another major event to Kansas City, like a Royal Rumble. I can certainly see that. And then, there are other events. I know there are a lot of musicians who do concerts. They will never perform outdoors, and I can certainly understand that. I always give props to any musician that comes to Arrowhead in July or August for a concert, because I listen. I already think it's crazy that people are going in the sweltering heat, and I don't care if it's at night. It is still hot as hell. I mean, stepping outside in Kansas City during that time is not something you see from a lot of people. If you see people going for a walk at the park or in their neighborhood, wherever in Kansas City, they do it pretty early in the morning. You hardly see a lot of people do it during the day because it's so damn hot outside in July and August. So whenever a musician's doing that kind of thing, it's not easy to do. Like I said, there are some musicians that won't ever do outdoor events. They'll only do it indoors. So I certainly think that's something to consider as well when it comes to the whole stadium thing. And by the way, man, I'm not for this whole Kansas versus Missouri crap. Like, what are we doing with that thing? Like, we always blame the media. Oh, the media is dividing our country. No, the media is not dividing nothing. People themselves are doing that. The reason I make it such a big deal about this, it's like, listen, man, I came from a third world country, and thank God I was a baby when my parents got me the hell out of there, because I don't remember a damn thing. I've heard a lot of stories, more negative than positive. But man, it's just like, it's always interesting when people in Kansas talk about how terrible Missouri is, or people in Missouri talk about how terrible Kansas is. It's like, man, you're in the same country here and you're shaming other cities in your own country. Like, it's never made sense to me. I agree there are some bad parts in our country. Listen, if you want to look at the Kansas City area on both sides of the state line, and I've lived in this area essentially my entire life, so I know the good parts and maybe the sketchy parts to avoid. Every part of this country has that. I just never understood people fighting over. I think what makes Kansas City so unique is that our metro area has a lot of great things on the Kansas side and a lot of great things to do on the Missouri side. Whether it's sports, places to eat, drink, shop, whatever, parks, all those stuff. I mean, you have them on both sides of the state line, and there have been a lot of players, coaches, whether it's for the Royals, Chiefs, or any of the local college teams, KU, K-State, Mizzou. I think sometimes even when coaches who are not from here, but they coach at places like UMKC or Avila. I've listened to a lot of interviews over the years with these, with anyone that's been associated with athletics, not from here, talk about how much they really like Kansas City and how they really didn't think anything of Kansas City before and after leaving Kansas City. A lot of people miss it. We had Damon Heward on the podcast, and Damon Heward's been to so many places in his career. He ended up going back to his home in Washington, which is understandable. He mentioned on this podcast, he and his wife have a lot of family there. But he talked about how he and his wife were very close to staying here because of how much they love the city. Trent Green is not from here. I mean, this guy's played for so many different teams over the years. He ended up staying here. I know when he got traded to the Dolphins, he kept his home here in Kansas City. Eric Fisher, I know when he was a Chief, he was let go. He went on to play for the Colts. And it's funny because my brother and I, we were out for breakfast one day. The Colts just had a Thursday night game. And then the next morning, Friday morning, you guys remember in Overland Park on 151st and Metcalf, where the old Blockbuster used to be? That's now a First Watch. But anyway, we went there, and right after a Thursday night football game, the next morning, Eric Fisher, I see Eric Fisher walk into the door. Anyway, my point is, you have a lot of former Chiefs players and a lot of former athletes that come and go from here. A lot of them keep their homes here. I've had Dan Shanka, who scouted for Andy Reid in Philly, scouted for Dick Vermeil here in Kansas City, also scouted for KU. He talked about how a lot of his family is still here whenever they moved here because they're not from here. I don't know where Dan lives, but I know his son and daughter both chose to stay in Kansas City because they loved it so much. So I think we kind of forget about that. And it's just weird to me when people choose to battle over who the better state is and why the other side sucks. Like, what are we doing, man? We're one metro area. We're one team at the end of the day. I mean, sure, when the days of KU versus MU, okay, sure, have your back and forth, but I've never understood it, man. The idea that some people are claiming they'll never support the Chiefs ever again if they move to Kansas. What if they're still playing at a very high level? And it's hard to say that right now because we're 6 years from it. But are you real? Like, who are you going to root for? The Raiders? Are you going to root for the Bengals? Like, seriously, who are you going to root for? Are you just not going to watch football ever again in your life? All because the team moved 20 minutes away? The Raiders moved eight or 9 hours away, and their fans are still supporting their team. So, I don't know. That's just me. I've always said, I don't care where they go. I just want them to do it right. I will say for the Royals, I do think the Washington Square Park makes the most sense. It really does. But for God's sake, I hope they don't go to 119th and Null. First of all, it's a little weird to move to Overland Park. I mean, listen, I'm not saying anything bad about Overland Park. I lived in Overland Park for most of my childhood growing up. It's a great place. It really is. I'm not saying anything bad about OP at all, but I don't know. There are just way too many neighborhoods in that area. And I know Arrowhead has some neighborhoods just south of it, but I mean, those houses, if I'm not mistaken, I think Arrowhead was built before the neighborhoods. So I don't know, man. I think it'd be great. And I said Arrowhead, I meant Kauffman Stadium. If Kauffman Stadium was next to Town Center and Park Place is a very underrated area, in my opinion. That'd be great for those businesses there, for sure. A lot of places to eat and drink in that little area there, Town Center and Park Place, but it's just not ideal. I know Blue Hawk has been mentioned as well, which is also in Overland Park. The land would certainly be ideal, but that is way too far. That is the Royals would be closer to Spring Hill than they would be downtown Kansas City. I don't think the Royals want to move that far south. I don't know John Sherman personally, but I have a feeling you don't want to go that far south of the central core of Kansas City. That would be a massive move, in my opinion. All right, so those are just kind of my big thoughts for tonight. I am going to turn it over to you guys. Whatever questions, comments you guys have, I am going to answer them right now here, starting with Cameron. He says, I'm going to be honest, I don't know how I feel about Travis returning. Look, I know there are some people who weren't really too fond of that cap hit. It's a $19.8 million cap hit for Travis Kelce, so I can understand that. His production has gone down a little bit, but still top 5 among tight ends, specifically receptions and yards. But the effort's got to be better. Now, he told Pat McAfee he's going to get into the best shape of his life. Okay. I mean, listen, a lot of athletes say that kind of thing. I trust that he'll do that. I think I had Nick Lowry, Chiefs Hall of Famer Nick Lowry, on the podcast last year leading up to Super Bowl 58. And I know Nick, he even alluded to this on my podcast, but Nick got a lot of attention because remember when the Chiefs lost to the Broncos and that was considered a big upset? And that was Patrick's first loss to the Broncos. Nick Lowry criticized Travis Kelce and the Chiefs as a whole and said the reason the Chiefs lost is because Travis Kelce that Friday night chose to attend the World Series. I can't remember if it was Houston or so one of the Texas teams. I apologize. I don't watch baseball, so I don't really know. My thing is this. I understand Travis Kelce. I mean, he's not flying in Friday afternoon and then leaving Saturday morning to come back to Kansas City. I mean, that guy's living the private jet type of life, that kind of luxury. So he definitely had a private jet waiting for him before and after the game. But even then, like, we hear players complain a lot about travel and all that stuff and not getting enough rest. And Travis Kelce did choose to go to Texas and then come right back. I know Kelce and Mahomes, they chose to attend a bowl game and then went straight back to Arrowhead or to Kansas City, I should say. I don't remember the exact timing of that, but again, Mahomes, and I'm sure you guys have seen this on their social media, specifically Brittany, because she posts a lot of that stuff. I mean, They're not going through KCI Airport like the rest of us, waiting at the gates and going through TSA. No, they're going through the private jet life. They don't go to the same places we go when we're flying out. But you owe it to yourself to get a lot of rest. Did Travis Kelce have to be there? I don't know. My point is, I think Travis Kelce and obviously Taylor Swift has certainly helped with this, has kind of taken advantage of attending events even during football season. I've even seen Swifties say, "Oh, let him attend the Grammys." It's like he's preparing for a Super Bowl, and you want him to not attend a practice on Monday to go to the Grammys? Okay. Swifties apparently know a lot more football than people who actually have watched it for a very long time, but okay. I don't know. But anyway, I know that was a very long answer to that response there. Daniel says, do you think the Chiefs sign a player like Ronnie Stanley for left tackle? Yeah, so Alaric Jackson is no longer on the board for Kansas City. He has re-signed with the Rams. That was a 3-year deal. Cam Robinson is certainly a candidate. Dan Moore, I know as well. Yeah, you mentioned Ronnie Stanley. They're going to cost a lot, so you have to restructure some deals before then. I'm sure Mahomes is going to be a candidate for that. Jawan Taylor as well. Maybe Travis Kelce. We'll see what they do, but yeah, Ronnie Stanley for sure is someone who they're going to consider this offseason. Would I rather have Diggs or Brown? I'm assuming that's Stephon Diggs or Hollywood Brown. I've got to go with Hollywood Brown. Listen, they're both coming off big injuries. Brown was able to come back and finish the season, whereas Diggs wasn't. How old is Stephon Diggs? Stephon Diggs is a tremendous wide receiver. I've always been a big fan of his. He'll turn 32 in late November. Hollywood's much younger and much faster. Diggs, there's always been some drama that's just always followed Stephon Diggs. Listen, I mean, Andy Reid, I think he still has nightmares of the time Terrell Owens was on his team in Philly. I don't think he wants to deal with that kind of thing anymore. I really don't. And last year was a terrible offseason for the Chiefs with off the field issues. Some of it on the player, some of it not. I can't remember the name of I think it was Isaiah Buggs, who got cut for like so many different things he was dealing with legally. The Rashee Rice incident certainly did not look good. Then there was a second incident, and kind of a question as to what really happened. They were able to clarify nothing. At least Rice was not in the wrong of what happened there. And then, boy, I know Xavier Worthy had his car stolen. And then there was another incident. There were quite a bit of things, unfortunately, last year for the Chiefs. I think Andy Reid really wants to have a drama-free offseason. I don't think the Chiefs have time to really deal with any of that stuff. I mean, no one does. But the Chiefs, they kind of went through it quite a lot last year, so they don't want to go through that again. So your answer, Hollywood Brown. Jim says, I think at this point, the cost is not worth it. Let Noah take over and draft another tight end to add to the other 2 or 3 on the roster here. For the cost, I agree. But like I said earlier, Travis Kelce has played for less for a very long time. He has. So I'm not going to argue with. So Travis, listen, I know Travis Kelce, his superstar power just went through the roof these last 2 years. He did a bunch of magazine covers, and usually when you do a magazine cover, you do a photo shoot and you give him an exclusive interview. So I can't remember which interview he did it with, but in one of the interviews he gave, he talked about willing to play for less and how his teammate Tyreek Hill left Kansas City and got 2 to 3 times more than what he was getting in Kansas City. And Travis has said, yeah, he could easily demand the same thing, but he doesn't because he prefers success over that kind of money. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember Scott Pioli, the former Chiefs general manager. Prior to joining the Chiefs, Scott Pioli was with the Patriots, and he was there when they got Tom Brady. And obviously, Tom Brady turned into a fantastic player for them, winning all those Super Bowls. Scott Pioli said something. I know a lot of people have this idea that prior to his divorce, of course, that Brady was always willing to take less because his wife was bringing a lot of money and her net worth was always more than Brady's. Scott Pioli shared a story on Sirius XM NFL Radio, and I'll never forget this. He was always willing to take less because he felt like if he could not survive on $8, $9, $10 million, and keep in mind we're talking about the mid to late 2000s here, it just was he just didn't feel like that made sense. So even before Giselle was a big part of his life at the time, Brady was always willing to take less money, according to Scott Pioli, because he felt like he was able to survive on the money that he was making. And obviously Brady's done great things for himself in his playing career. And of course, with the successful career he's had, he now is part of the Fox broadcast. I don't know if he still does the Let's Go podcast. I don't know if he still does that, but he was getting paid for it at the time. He has so many endorsements. I'm sure there's a long list of them. And he's certainly thrived on all of that. I mean, that guy's not losing a lot of money anytime soon. Been very smart with his money over the years. So, anyway, my point is, yeah, Kelce, I mean, we'll see. And by the way, for the question about the ads, oh, yeah, of course. I mean, when you listen to any podcast and you hear an ad about ticketing services, of course, on the Chiefs On podcast, we have SeatGeek. We also have Fathead. We've had other sponsors in the past. Yeah, those you certainly get paid for those. A lot of podcasts have them. Some podcasts don't. I know a lot of podcast hosts offer a service where you can pay a certain amount per month, and you can listen to the podcast ad free. That's certainly another way those podcasters make money. So yeah, those are options certainly available. Chiefs can take over the Royals spot. Yeah, that would certainly be ideal. And that parking spot is a great place. It really is a great parking lot. You have the practice facility right there. They've got to renovate the locker room because the Chiefs certainly do not approve of it. But that would be certainly a good place to do it because it sounds like the Royals are out of the Truman Sports Complex. It just doesn't seem like the Royals will play baseball there after 2031. Yeah, but they've gone to cold places before, like Minnesota. The difference is Minnesota has an indoor stadium. And I know someone once commented, Kansas City has no excuse because they had East Rutherford, New Jersey host the Super Bowl. Yeah, they did once. They haven't been back since then. It was a terrible idea to begin with. A brand new stadium is great for business and the local economy. So many events will schedule. Yes, certainly. That's kind of how I feel about it. I know with Allegiant Stadium, and because you guys know my connection to Vegas, I know. So I kind of follow a lot of the Vegas news that goes on there. I know Allegiant Stadium hosts a lot of like business events there. It's not always, sporting event or a concert. They've got other events they're having there too, and it's easy to do because it's indoors. You won't see that kind of thing at Arrowhead because it's outdoors and the weather can be unpredictable if you schedule something far in advance. The only event other than a concert I've seen outdoors at Arrowhead, I mean, yeah, they do Monster Jam. It's always a surprise to me when they go when these big events schedule an outdoor event because you never know what the weather's going to be like. I was surprised WWE had WrestleMania in Philly last year. I mean, it was pretty damn cool, like 40s, 50s. I mean, it's not terribly cold, but when the wrestlers are wearing spandex and some of them, wearing briefs, shirtless, yeah, that's pretty fucking cold. I hate the cold. But I do agree with you, Robert. There are so many other events that could be held with a roof. Yes. Kind of echoing Robert's comment there previously. I saw something about Isaiah Pacheco. No. He is under contract. Guys, I don't know why. There are a lot of Facebook pages and groups that love to spread fake news. I don't know why. I don't know why people feel the need to do it, but yeah. And it's not just Chiefs pages and groups. I'm seeing this from I saw some Eagles fan page quote Brittany Mahomes blaming the Super Bowl on the referee. Brittany never spoke publicly about the Super Bowl. So again, people just have narratives they want to push out there. That's our society today, unfortunately. See, Layla has a good point here. We need a retractable roof, so we still have the flyover. See, this is my thing here. If you choose to renovate Arrowhead, okay, good, but then you won't have the opportunity to bring in those big events in the future. And if I'm being honest, me personally, I'm not a fan of those renovation plans that they proposed last year. If you have an indoor stadium, well, you lose the flyover here. At this point, it's like there are pros and cons to everything for whatever option you go with if you're the Chiefs. So there are certainly a lot of things to consider for Kansas City. I'll read a few more here and get out. Daniel says years ago, Lamar Hunt had a proposal to put a roof on Arrowhead. It would, yeah. Was it a roof or was it a rolling roof, Daniel? I remember the rolling roof. I'm glad that did not pass. That looks ugly as shit. I mean, you have this weird roof that can roll around, cover Arrowhead, and then cover the K. And if you don't need it, it just kind of sits there in the middle, right in that parking lot between the two stadiums. And I don't know, like, what kind of material were they going to use for that roof? It certainly was going to be unique and different, but it would be just aesthetically speaking, a really ugly look for a sports complex. Outdoor events here in Phoenix during the summer are non-existent. Nobody is hanging out in 115-degree weather. Oh man, I believe that. I will say this: I will take the heat over the cold any day. I know some people that work outdoors, like construction workers, will certainly argue against that, and I understand. I'm very fortunate. I don't have to work outdoors in July. In June, I used to. For those who don't know, I used to be the stadium DJ for the Kansas City Royals, and I always gave props to our camera crew because they are outdoors and they really don't have a seat. They're standing the entire time. I remember one of the camera guys, he was unable to work a certain game that he was scheduled to work, and he couldn't find anyone to fill in for him. And he reached out to me. He's like, "Hey man, how do you feel about making your way out of the control room and working a camera?" I'm like, first of all, I have not operated one of those big cameras in a long time. I've operated video cameras before, not those big giant ones you see at sporting events on those like massive tripods. I've never operated one of those before. And I certainly don't want to do something that I would not be prepared to work. But the other thing is standing for 3 to 4 hours because we do pregame as well. Yeah, with my knees, I cannot do that. Plus the heat. It's like, no, thank you. Parking would be horrendous, and so would the traffic in that area. I assume you mean 119th and Null? Yeah. I mean, listen, they can build the land is there. They would have to do a lot of work for it. But in that specific area, I just don't think that'll work. And by the way, aren't there 2 hospitals right in that area? I know there's Menorah Hospital, Menorah Medical Center, I think it is. Let me look at the map real quickly here. Come on. Yeah, Menorah Medical Center is south of it. And then there's another place. Oh, the Jewish Community Center. I've heard a lot of great things about the Jewish Community Center. I only went once. That was in elementary school. That was like part of our elementary graduation gift is they took us there. And I hardly remember it because it was so damn long ago. But that's the only time I've ever been there. I don't think you want to put Kauffman Stadium next to the Jewish Community Center. And I don't know if they would be willing to move. Like, that's just not a good spot. I mean, if none of that stuff was there, sure, the land is great, except there are a shit ton of neighborhoods nearby. And I just don't think that's a really good fit for the Royals. Even if they're bad, I mean, there's still some traffic there. If they're playing great baseball, oh boy, the traffic there would be an absolute nightmare. If they move our clubs or move to Kansas too far. They will lose the people that supported them for 60 years. Shame on them. I mean, listen, the Legends area, it is a bit, it's kind of out there, little too west. Like if you go any more west of the Legends area, and I'm trying to pull that up, you're kind of starting to reach like the area where, okay, it's no longer considered the Kansas City metro area, like Basehor, Tonganoxie. You're kind of in that rural territory, if you will. I mean, you'd be not too terribly far from Lawrence, Kansas at that point. You would still be closer to Kansas City, downtown Kansas City than Lawrence, but still. But the Legends, I mean, that's still a very popular attraction at the end of the day. It's just the only negative, and again, like I said, a lot of pros and cons to whatever the Chiefs end up doing. The one con is it would be far out west. So for those of you who are out there in Blue Springs, get ready for a long drive. And for those of us who live in South Joco, we're used to it. How likely is Hollywood Brown to resign another team-friendly deal? Rice, Worthy, and Brown sounds like a solid trio. That's exactly what we said about, I don't want to say a year ago this time, because a year ago this time free agency didn't start. But when they signed Hollywood Brown very early in free agency, that's what everybody talked about. Well, Worthy wasn't drafted yet. So they drafted Worthy, they brought back Rice, and Hollywood Brown was signed. And everyone talked about that trio, and we never saw that trio. I am excited to see what would happen if they were to bring back Hollywood Brown, because he didn't play much, never scored a touchdown last year for the Chiefs in the 5 games he played. I think, yeah, you are due to be able to bring Hollywood back on a very team-friendly deal, Robert. I do agree with that. Corporate greed, yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not going to argue against all of that. I know the KC Tenants group, their whole thing was the owners can afford their own stadiums. And quite frankly, I don't disagree. I really don't. But at the end of the day, whenever these things are being built, the owners will foot part of the bill, and then the taxpayers do the rest. That's just kind of the way it's been, whether it's here or elsewhere. If I'm not mistaken, I think Tennessee, they have some of their taxpayers are paying for some of that as well. I mean, that's just the way it's always been. Kelce has always, yeah, Mickey says Kelce is making money from other things. Bob says Kelce has been all about winning, not money. Is the best tight end in the NFL. Let him play as long as he can. He has earned it. Yeah, certainly. And I think, yeah, he has proven he's not doing this for the money. The guy's always played for less than what he really deserves. I mean, he deserves much more in past seasons. I mean, just look at his contract. You've certainly seen it. It's out there for everyone to check out. He could have made more, but chose not to. So he's certainly earned it. I do agree, Bob. Yeah, but Mickey, that was always in the plan there for them to make renovations for the World Cup, because that was part of the plan for a very long time. That was already, an agreement they had once they were set to receive the World Cup. At the time, there wasn't really any talk about moving the Chiefs, moving the Royals. I know the whole Royals downtown talk has been a thing for about 10 years now. So, but with the Chiefs, it was never a thought at the time that they could leave Arrowhead. Now it's like, this could be a possibility. Couple more questions here. John says, does keeping Trey Smith mean Bolton and or Reed are gone? Yes, John. And I hate to say it, but look, you guys know better than I do that, or just as well as I do, that you can't keep everyone. The Chiefs have drafted very well. And when you draft very well, the problem you run into is, how the hell do you keep everyone? Well, realistically, you can't. Tyrann Mathieu walked, Tyreek Hill was traded, L'Jarius Sneed was traded, and you're going to see one, possibly two big fan favorites move on. Of those 3 names you mentioned right there, John, in your comment, Trey Smith, Nick Bolton, Justin Reed, 2 of those 3 guys are gone. They are. I would be, if you were able to bring back 2 of those 3, good on Veach. Now, I would question if you would have enough money to bring in a viable left tackle. So we'll see what happens there. Layla says, I hope they bring Hollywood back. Yeah, I was excited for Hollywood Brown. Listen, I know when players come back from an injury, they're never quite 100% because they want to get back into the swing of things. They're tired of the rehab. They just want to get back out there and play. And, we saw Hollywood get involved. But I'm not convinced he was, 100% fully all in there, because first couple of games he kind of needed a field. And he actually played well in those 2 games he played in the regular season against the Texans and against the Steelers. Kind of a more quiet showing from him in the playoffs. But I do think that if you bring Hollywood back, have him go through the entire offseason again with Mahomes, and they went through a lot together in the offseason. Hollywood and Rice, they were spending a lot of time together training. I mean, I just think it's a good fit for both sides, both Hollywood and the Chiefs. So I really hope that ends up being the case. All right, guys, I'm going to stop it right there. I appreciate everyone who tuned in for this edition of the Red Friday live chat. Not as long as some of the other Red Friday live chats that we've done. But that's okay. We did a lot of podcasts and live streams this week here. So a lot of ground we covered this week. That's just the way the news cycle worked out here. So I do appreciate everyone who's tuned in, not just tonight, but all week long. If you've missed any of this episode of the Red Friday Live Chat or any of the podcasts, everything will be available. The Red Friday Live Chat is exclusively on Facebook and YouTube, but all the podcasts, if you missed any part of those podcasts, or maybe you missed all of them and you want to go back and listen to what I had to say, some of it we've covered on here. There are some stuff that happened this week we didn't talk about today, but we covered very well on the podcast there. Check them out. They're available on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere where you can download and listen to a podcast. The Chiefs on Podcast is available there. Just a quick favor, if you guys can get a chance, give this video a like if you haven't already. Share it. Let your friends know about these live streams. It definitely helps out, even in the off season, which obviously not as active as the regular season, and understandably so, but we're still hitting big numbers in the off season. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Much love to all of you. Thank you again for watching the Red Friday live chat. Have a great weekend. I'm Farzin Vasugian. I'm out.